My family has forsaken me due to my sister's guilt about her divorce. Out of nowhere, years later, I receive an email that explains everything and provides proof. Thus, I wrecked her life with it. My family severed ties with me and forcibly removed me from their home nearly 7 years ago. The events that transpired were so abrupt that I, 29M, had no time to emotionally or monetarily prepare for them. I was also 22 years old and lacked the financial stability to rent an apartment on my own. My sister was the driving force behind it all. Hannah, my sister, is 37 years old but petite, due to the large age difference between us, and I have never had a close relationship. When she was 27 years old, she tied the knot with her 39-year-old boyfriend, Pete. They were married for 3 years. After 3 years of marriage, Pete and Hannah got a divorce due to Hannah's accusations that he had an affair with my buddy. After finishing college, I wanted to save up some money before moving out, so I stayed with my parents. I had just begun working. It wasn't until my sister filed for a divorce that my parents also approved of the arrangement. She returned home one day, sobbing uncontrollably. She went public with the news that she had filed for a divorce, citing 6 months of infidelity on her husband's part. After that, she proceeded to accuse me of being responsible for my friend's introduction to him. Pete volunteered to assist my friend Emily, who is 28 years old and attempting to put on weight, because he is a registered dietitian. Apparently she was the one with whom Pete had been having an affair with my sister, and I was the one who introduced her to him. I was taken aback by this development because, despite our lack of intimacy, I had a strong belief that Emily was a decent lady who would never sleep with a married guy. On top of that, Pete's dishonesty was completely unexpected. It was so hard for me to believe that he had cheated on Hannah because he was so head over heels for her and was always glowing about her. Even the fact that she never had evidence of his infidelity, my parents believed her without question and never questioned anything, even my suspicions. Regardless of who was right, they would still choose their daughter above their son-in-law, so I won't hold it against them that they simply accepted her word for it. I failed to grasp why they so quickly expelled me based just on Hannah's word. She had a temper tantrum and barged in all at once. Even though I was the one who introduced Emily to Pete, I managed to persuade my parents to expel me from the house. My parents seemed to agree with her when she said that I was the one who brought her marriage to its knees. I attempted to persuade my parents to let me go, but they were uninterested in listening and threatened to remove me from the house if I persisted. I was upset. I had no idea what to do after losing my house and family in the span of a single day. For over an hour, I sobbed on the pavement with all my belongings until I mustered the strength to go to a friend's house for the night. I wasted a few days trying to get in touch with them daily, but to no avail. For the time being, my friend graciously allowed me to stay at his place until I could secure my own apartment. My parents had already decided that I was totally to blame for the divorce and that I was completely wrong about this. It was puzzling, because it wasn't like I had cheated on Pete. My parents had made it clear that they were repulsed by my actions before expelling me. They had blocked my number, so I couldn't reach them, and my mom threatened to call the police if I persisted in my visitation. At last, it hit me they were taking this seriously and really did hold me responsible for what had transpired. My sister has always been the favorite child, so I guess there was no need for me to be surprised. Although I didn't enjoy being an only child because my parents hadn't intended to have more than one, I had no idea that my silence would eventually lead to something so monumental. In hindsight, I suppose I should have anticipated it. But to be honest, I doubt anyone in my position could have anticipated anything like this. Since my parents and Hannah had effectively severed all communication with me, I spent the following 2 weeks trying to piece things together on my own in an effort to make sense of what had happened. Pete also blocked me, so we couldn't communicate, and I still don't understand why. Since Hannah and Pete had already left the house they had been residing in and were staying with their parents, I was also unable to locate him. I turned to Emily, my last hope for getting to the bottom of things. Because I couldn't reach anybody else. I had to do what was necessary, even though Emily and I weren't particularly close. I only requested a meeting with her at some point so that I could fill her in on the details. She disputed Hannah's claims about the affair with an iron fist when I pressed her for confirmation. To tell the truth, I bought into her story. I asked Emily about her interactions with Pete, and she said they were all business-related. There was clearly no tension between them, and she was perplexed as to why Hannah would speak so ill of her. It was revealed to me that she had been in a committed relationship for a couple of years, and was also intending to tie the knot in a few months. She was far more persuasive than Hannah, and she even provided me images to back up her claims. Even though I lacked evidence, I had a gut feeling that Hannah had lied about the true cause of the divorce. Unfortunately, I was unable to return to my family or even return without the proof. Even though my family had harmed me, I still really wanted to return to their home because I missed them so much. Nonetheless, I eventually got over it and proceeded with my life as normal. Finding a job and a place to live gave me purpose and allowed me to divert my attention from my problems. The fact that I had to pay the bills on top of everything else made it a more practical means of dealing than, say, moping about in misery. No matter how much my loved ones tried to discourage me, I knew I had to keep going. After a while, things started looking up for me. Not only did I just get engaged to my long-term partner of 2 years, but I also downsized from my cramped apartment and into a considerably larger one. In the end, it was our engagement post that changed everything for me. I landed a job within days of that post. Out of nowhere, I got an email with proof attached that not only detailed the whole narrative of Hannah's divorce, but also offered me all the answers I needed. The engagement photo ended up on my fiancée Liza's 30F Facebook feed as well, where she had access to a larger following, even though she normally only posted us on Instagram. Additionally, it was a public post, so it was seen by many. Pete, my ex-brother-in-law, is among them. My fiancée met a medical conference a few years ago. She ended up adding him on Facebook, which is how he found me. I felt joy over the realization that the world is actually quite small for the first time. Although he could have texted me on social media, he chose to send me an anonymous email a few days after we posted. It had been a few years following his divorce, and he didn't want to appear like a bitter loser who hadn't moved on from what occurred. He revealed later that he did this simply to avoid feeling awkward about what he was doing. Plus, he felt awkward and self-conscious about. We're dating if it hadn't been for my friend Frank, who worked as a cashier at a grocery shop close to Hannah's house when they were dating. He's 28 years old. Pete found out, I suppose, even if they had kept everything under wraps. And when Pete confronted Hannah, she blamed me for everything. I had introduced her to Frank, and I had even told her he needed her help as a vocalist, and she was already fairly excellent. Therefore it was my fault, she said. They had fallen in love without realizing it when she promised to assist him. According to her, I was even complicit in it and had assisted them in concealing the truth over an extended period of time. Of course, it was all an elaborate hoax, and I had no idea that Frank and Hannah were seeing each other. After learning the truth, he became so enraged that he blocked my entire family. This, looking back, he realizes was quite foolish of him, but he was fuming mad and hadn't given his acts much consideration. Since he didn't want his identity to be revealed through the email, he explained everything to me in person. However, I was able to deduce it. He included copies of emails between my sister and Frank as evidence, in which they boasted about how easy it is to fool Pete, confessed their love, and planned their next meeting site. Even though few people know her middle name. She signed off on the emails using it, so there was no way she could deny anything. She was dead in my hands. After searching through Liza's Facebook friends, I finally located Pete and contacted him. My intuition told me that this had to do with social media. I then proceeded to verify that Pete was the sender of the email. During our recent meeting, he informed me that he had learned of Hannah's confession to her family from Emily, who had crossed paths with him a few years before. It hit me like a ton of bricks when I realized that had I not advised her not to tell Pete about my side of the story, I could have proven my innocence long ago. I was hating myself for doing that. So, they ran into each other a few years ago, and she ended up asking him about self-centered, particularly when they were my blood relative. She probably hadn't bothered to correct the record either, and my parents had simply swallowed the lies she'd told them throughout her divorce. She knew that our parents would find out the truth about her being the cheater, and she couldn't risk getting into serious trouble. I was going to use it to destroy her life the way she had destroyed mine years ago. It had finally come out, which was a shame. It just so happened that my family hadn't relocated since I hadn't seen them in 7 years, so I had no idea if they were still living in the same place. I was relieved to hear from a former neighbor that Hannah was still living with them, so I made sure to check with her before I showed up. That didn't surprise me much because Hannah has always been a total couch potato and the divorce. They started talking, and eventually he found out what Hannah had told us. He came clean about his desire to tell me the truth in a conversation, but he was too self-conscious to do so. My life would have been much easier to handle if Pete hadn't been so easily embarrassed. Although I was angry with him, I eventually forgave him because I knew he would help me kill my sister. Hannah had undoubtedly lied to my parents in order to receive financial support after her divorce. She had even framed me as a scapegoat, knowing that I would uncover the truth after just one discussion with Emily. It was hard for me to comprehend how someone could be so despises working. I'm sure she would gladly take advantage of the opportunity to live with her elderly parents and have them take care of all her chores. Anyhow, it was 2 days ago. My friend Pete and I dropped by their house unannounced. As soon as my mom answered the door, we rushed in, scarcely giving her a moment to process what was occurring. Hannah and my dad were also in the living room, so we were all back together as a joyful family. However, Their faces quickly turned glum the moment we walked in. I retaliated quickly, telling my dad that he could do anything he wanted as long as he read the papers we were going to provide to the authorities before threatening to contact the police if we didn't immediately leave his house. Hannah, who appeared as though she was about to vomit, excused herself to go to her room as my parents appeared really perplexed. I assumed she was attempting to flee, although that would have been pointless anyhow. I proceeded to tell the truth as Pete presented the divorce papers and email exchanges between Frank and Hannah. In addition, Pete informed my parents that my high school teacher Hannah had to sell our family heirloom, a diamond ring belonged to my grandmother, in order to pay him the settlement amount. That was the icing on the cake for my parents, who were terrified by what we had told them before. All of us were there as the drama unfolded. My dad wanted to know what had happened, and Hannah refused to stop trying to hide the truth. Finally, my dad kicked her out because she wouldn't stop lying. He gave her the luggage he had packed for her and urged us to leave their house immediately. My sister pleaded and screamed with my parents to let her back in, just like I had done all those years before, and I didn't need to be reminded twice I departed with Pete. As far as I'm concerned, this was the epitome of good karma. Some time has passed since then, and just a few hours ago my sister dropped by my apartment, insisting that my parents and I immediately mend our relationship. I informed her that I no longer knew her, even though I was unsure of how she had discovered me. We were now on equal ground since she had once devastated my life, and I had returned the favor. As soon as I said that, she began to cry and accused me of being a monster, so I guess she truly had no pride left. However, I locked the door behind her, while she sobbed uncontrollably since I didn't care about her drama, so that neither my girlfriend Liza nor I would be interrupted while she worked in her study. I just plugged in my headphones and listened to music. Hannah eventually left us alone, but not before leaving a note and a marking on my door to serve as a constant reminder that I was nothing more than a monster bent on vengeance. Frankly, I don't feel sorry for myself or see any wrongdoing in what I did, but Hannah seemed to be fairly sure that I am the antagonist in this situation. Just like she had done to me years ago, I told her the truth while she lied and threw me under the bus. That's all I did. Have you all made up your minds? AITA, for 7 years after she blamed me for her divorce, you ruined my sister's life and had her evicted. Update 1. A full week has gone since Hannah was sent out, but she continues to annoy me. She contacted me 14 times today before she finally stopped, and I had to threaten her with the fear of the police to get her to stop. For the moment, it doesn't matter how she got my address and phone number, what matters is that she did. I don't think it's true that a school teacher's salary isn't enough to live on, and Hannah is just upset that she has to find a place to live and pay for her own electricity, groceries, and rent since our parents kicked her out. So I don't feel too sorry for her, but she's trying to make me feel bad for her. Just so you know, I did block her number multiple times. However, it seems like she's having her buddies include me in conference calls, so blocking her isn't really helping. In comparison to Hannah, my parents are dreadful. They discovered me on Facebook and also noticed the post regarding my engagement. Therefore, they are eager to re-enter my life and have even expressed a wish to attend my wedding. They still haven't said sorry, but I can't see why they think I should simply invite them to my wedding, a day that is meant to be so special to me. At least I'm not replying to any of it. I don't know where these people get the nerve to spew such nonsense. Since there is absolutely no possibility that they are serious at this moment, Liza and I have spent a great deal of time reading their texts. For their sake, it's all very tragic. Version 2. Yesterday, after I threatened to report Hannah for harassment, she returned to my residence. Before I could even get in my car to go to work, she threw herself on the hood and wouldn't budge until I got in touch with her. I finally contacted the authorities since it was getting on my nerves. Even though she shouted and sobbed and did her best to paint me as the villain, nobody bought her sad girl act, and she was taken away. I didn't want to let this minor incident spoil my day, so I rushed to lodge charges against her. I then left for work. I was also correct in my assumption that my parents would rescue her regardless, given how much they loved her. After my parents helped her out, they sent me a long text apologizing for their honest error from almost a decade ago and telling me I was being too hard on them. The fact that my sister and parents had subjected me to so much pain for no good reason made it all the more funny. They sent me out onto the street, knowing full well that I had nowhere else to go, and they certainly weren't ignorant of how cruel they were. I don't see the point in being lenient and forgiving now that I can treat them the same way. I replied to my parents' text message by telling them that they had no business trying to dictate my abilities 7 years ago, and that they should quit fooling themselves. I will block them shortly. I just haven't had the chance to check my messages lately. By that point, I'm hoping I can finally put this family behind me. Came to the realization that my folks had written me another lengthy note. This was the funniest thing I've ever read, Liza and I read it together, and it was hilarious. I suppose those unfortunate souls have no idea that their words and actions currently have no effect on me. Their complete lack of self-awareness and empathy is making me chuckle. Evidently, they still consider us family. They informed me that they've accepted Hannah back into their home, and that they think their children should have another opportunity. As if I had ever erred in any way, in addition to rehoming my sister. They were hoping that Liza and I would drop by for dinner soon, so that we could have a civilized argument before the wedding and get everything worked out. It was bold of them to think I would even invite them to my wedding. We had a nice laugh over their foolish communication, and I promptly responded by writing back to express my complete disinterest in their invitations and my satisfaction with continuing my 7-year separation. They had shown to me that I was better off apart from them, and for that I would be eternally grateful. They could keep playing happy family with my sister without me having to do anything, and I certainly didn't want their forgiveness either. After that last text, I decided I had had enough of their jokes and blocked them permanently. I had had enough and had left. Regrettably, I will not budge any longer. I'm sure they will attempt to contact me again in the near future. I am content with simply Liza as my family at the moment. My sister and parents have, however, never been able to put themselves first, and I seriously doubt that they ever will. Please let me know if they ever change their minds. I can assure you that they will also consult with my attorney.